The water burst against Donna Clarice's face, who screamed in shock from the fright. Camilla, the waitress, smiled, displaying her cruelty in front of the customers who were filming everything with their cell phones. What no one there knew was that, in seconds, the tables would turn, and the humiliated woman's son would show who was really in charge in that place. The crystal chandelier of the Bellagio restaurant reflected golden light onto the marble tables. Silver cutlery clinked against white porcelain. The air smelled of expensive wine and imported perfume. Donna Clarice, 62 years old, gray hair carefully braided, navy blue dress, simple but dignified, was seated at table 12. His hands trembled slightly as he held the menu. She didn't hear the conversations around her. Never heard. Camilla approached with firm steps, her white uniform impeccable, her blonde hair tied in a perfect bun. 28 years old, calculated smile, look that measured each client like merchandise. She stopped beside the table. He tapped his fingers on the counter impatiently. Donna Clarice didn't notice. Camilla hit harder. Nothing. Then she took the glass of ice water from the tray, and he played. The water exploded against Donna Clarice's face. She screamed, not from pain, from fear, from the shock of feeling something cold and violent without warning. Camilla crossed her arms, satisfied. Learn to behave. This is no place for people like you. The hall froze for 2 seconds. Then came the sound, muffled laughter, cell phone clicks, discreet flashes. Table 4 filmed from the side, trying to disguise it. Table 7 chuckled softly, hands covering their mouths. Table 2 looked away, embarrassed, but silent. Donna Clarice breathed deeply, water running down her neck, staining her dress. His eyes were closed, but his hands no longer shook. In the corner of the room, table 17, Lucas Mendes slowly stood up. 34 years old, tailored charcoal gray suit jacket, white shirt without a tie. He didn't run, he didn't scream, he just stood there. And he looked. He looked at Camilla with an intensity that cut through the air. He looked at each customer he filmed, for everyone who laughed, for everyone who pretended not to see. His jaw was locked, fists clenched at the sides of the body. No one has noticed yet, but the temperature of the room had changed. Camilla felt it. I didn't know where that sudden discomfort came from, but he felt it. She took a step back instinctively before composing herself and lifting her chin again. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off her. And for the first time that night, Camilla was afraid of something she couldn't yet name, because the man watching her didn't look like any other customer. She looked like someone who knew exactly who she was, and what she had just done. And worst of all, he didn't seem surprised. Donna Clarice didn't scream again. Her silence was louder than any sound in that room. Water ran down her face, dripped onto her lap, stained the navy blue dress she had ironed 3 times before leaving the house. His hands were on the table, open, shaking. Not out of fear, of containment. She closed her eyes slowly. He took a deep breath through his nose. 1, 2, 3 times. The air came in heavy, came out even heavier. All around, customers continued filming. Some had already posted on stories. Others sent it in WhatsApp groups. The humiliation was going viral in real time. But Donna Clarice didn't see any of that, because she was born with a hearing problem that had no treatment. And in that moment, her silence was the only thing that mattered. Inside her head, an ancient voice echoed. Grandma Joanna's voice, calloused hands holding her face at age 10. After being thrown out of a downtown store, "Black woman never lowers her head, my daughter. Even wet you shine." Clarice opened her eyes, slowly, and he raised his face. Drops of water still fell from his chin, but she didn't clean it. He didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. She looked directly at Camilla, and then, with his hands still wet, he articulated in sign language. Slowly, firm. Every movement was precise, loaded with decades of resistance. Respect. The word floated in the air like a sentence. Camilla blinked, confused. I didn't understand sign language, but he felt the weight of it. Some customers around noticed the gesture. Table 9, where a 30-year-old black woman sat alone, put her hand to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. She knew exactly what Donna Clarice had said, because she had also had to ask for respect in silence. Table 2, an elderly white gentleman, lowered his head in shame. He put away his cell phone, but he didn't get up. I didn't say anything. The complicity of silence still prevailed. Camilla took a step back instinctively. Something about that drenched woman was unsettling her. It wasn't anger. It wasn't despair. It was pure dignity. Unshakable. And that was scarier than any scream. Because Camilla expected submission, I expected Donna Clarice to get up and run away. That he apologized for existing in that space, but she didn't do any of that. She remained seated, with your back straight, hands on the table, firm gaze, as if to say without words, I have a right to be here. Lucas, still standing in the corner of the room, clenched his fists tighter. He knew that look. I had grown up seeing that look. When Mom came back from her boss's house after hearing insults, when I was carrying heavy bags on a crowded bus and no one offered me a seat, when I needed to prove 3 times more that I deserved to be anywhere, that look was an inheritance. It was ancestry. It was a silent war waged every day by black women who refused to disappear. Donna Clarice took the cloth napkin from the table. He calmly wiped his face. Every movement was an act of resistance. He folded the wet napkin beside the plate, and it stayed there, sitting, waiting, because leaving would be giving Camilla exactly what she wanted, and Donna Clarice no longer gave easy victories to anyone, not after 62 years of learning that existing was already revolutionary. Because sometimes resisting is just not moving. Table 4 was 10 feet away. A middle-aged white couple, she in a beige blazer, he in a light blue polo shirt. They chuckled softly, not loud enough to be obvious, but enough to be heard. She leaned over to her husband and whispered something. He smiled, nodded in agreement. The two went back to eating as if nothing had happened, as if a woman drenched in water and humiliation was just part of the decor. At table 7, 2 businessmen were adjusting their shirt cuffs. One of them, with neatly cut gray hair, avoided looking directly at Donna Clarice. The other one fidgeted with his cutlery nervously, turning his fork from side to side. They knew it was wrong, but they wouldn't do anything, because doing something would mean taking a stand, and taking a stand had a price. Table 9 was different. A black woman, alone, 30 years old, discreet red dress, curly hair tied in a bun. She held the cloth napkin to her mouth, trying to hold back the tears. His shoulders were shaking slightly. She knew that scene, not the same, but similar, in another restaurant, another store, another space where your presence was questioned simply for existing. She wanted to get up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cross the room and hug Donna Clarice, but fear kept her pinned to the chair. The fear of becoming a target too, if expelled, of having your name tarnished on social media. So she sat there, and he cried in silence. At table 2, an elderly white man with thinning hair and glasses lowered his head. He put his cell phone in his pocket. He felt ashamed, not of himself, but of what he was witnessing. But shame doesn't move bodies. Don't open your mouth. He remained seated, staring at his empty plate, as if food could erase the guilt. Camilla watched all this with barely concealed satisfaction. She had an audience. He had silent support. He had the luxury of being cruel without consequences, because no one there was going to stop her. No one ever stopped. Lucas saw every reaction. He cataloged every rice, every glance averted, every cell phone raised. He knew who these people were. I knew the guy. Those who laughed openly. Those who laughed in secret. Those who felt sorry but didn't move a muscle. All equally complicit. Because violence doesn't need shouting. Sometimes she just needs silence. And there was plenty of silence there. A young black waiter in a black uniform stood in the corner of the kitchen. He saw everything. I wanted to intervene, but I knew I would be fired before I finished my sentence. Then he clutched the tray tightly in his hands and swallowed his anger. One more, like so many others. The woman at table 9 finally raised her hand slightly. A small, almost imperceptible gesture, as if to say, I see you. I know what you're feeling. But the gesture died in the air, because she was also afraid. And Donna Clarice saw. He saw the aborted gesture. He saw the solidarity that could not be completed. And he understood, because she had been that woman too, the one who wanted to help, but couldn't. Her isolation was not just physical, it was structural, woven from decades of well-behaved silences. And the scariest thing was realizing how many people there thought they weren't doing anything wrong. If you've ever witnessed something like this, or if you've ever been that person isolated in a space that should be for everyone, share your experience in the comments. Lucas closed his eyes for 2 seconds, and he went back 15 years in time. The industrial kitchen of the former Da Silva restaurant. Smell of burnt fat mixed with chlorine. Steam rising from dented aluminum pans. Cracked white tiles. Floor slippery from so much water and soap. Lucas was 15 years old. Hands dipped in boiling water, scrubbing grimy dishes until the skin turns red. The sink was overflowing. Pots, pans, dirty glasses piled up to the ceiling. He worked from 6 in the evening until 2 in the morning, every day. While the other kids at school slept, he washed dishes, and he didn't complain. Because on the other side of the kitchen, Donna Clarice was scrubbing the marble floor. On your knees, her hands, chapped from the detergent, moved the cloth from side to side. She didn't hear the insults the owners shouted, but I felt it. In the tired body, in the back that hurt, on the raw knees. Lucas would stop washing dishes just to look at her, and I felt my chest tighten. Because that woman deserved to be sitting at a served table, not on your knees cleaning up other people's messes. One night after her shift, she sat next to him on the wooden bench in the back. He took off his old shoes and massaged his swollen feet. Lucas had his head down, exhausted. She touched his shoulder and said, "One day, son, this sweat will turn into conquest. You will have your name on the door." He had laughed in disbelief. "Mom, we can barely pay the rent." She looked at him with those eyes that carried entire generations. "Your grandfather Benedito drew restaurants on napkins. He never saw one come to fruition, but you will." Lucas remembered her voice, firm, right, as if the future were destiny, not luck. He opened his eyes back to the present. Donna Clarice was still sitting at that table, soaked, humiliated, but with your back straight. The same woman who scrubbed floors for 20 years so he could study accounting in sweat-soaked notebooks. The same one who sold lunchboxes at the factory gate to pay for his enrollment in the administration course. The same one who never, not once, asked him to give up. Lucas looked at his hands. They were no longer cracked from hot water. They were clean and well cared for. Owner's hands, of businessman. But they carried the same strength, because he hadn't forgotten where he came from. I hadn't forgotten the smell of chlorine, the weight of the pots, mother's knees bleeding on the cold floor, and now someone had thrown water at her, on her face, as if she were trash, as if 62 years of dignity were worth nothing. Lucas took a deep breath, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms. The anger was not explosive, it was cold, calculated, because he had learned from her that anger without direction is a waste, but anger with purpose becomes justice. And at that moment, justice was the only thing that mattered. He took a step forward, then another. The whole room suddenly seemed smaller, because Lucas was no longer the 15-year-old boy washing dishes. He was the man who turned every humiliation into fuel, every sleepless night in investing, every insult in motivation, and now everyone there would discover the price of disrespecting the woman who built it all, because no one touches the mother of a son who never forgot where he came from. Camilla noticed the cell phones, saw the discreet flashes, the curious looks, and he decided that it would become a scene, that it would be memorable. She straightened her posture, adjusting her impeccable white uniform. He raised his voice, not for Donna Clarice, for the entire hall. They should have banned those people from entering. The sentence cut the air like a razor. Some customers stopped chewing. Others leaned forward, attentive. Camilla continued, smiling. They spoil the atmosphere. They bring problems. They don't know how to behave in places like this. Every word was chosen with precision. It wasn't just cruelty. It was a pedagogy of exclusion, public teaching of who belongs and who doesn't. Across the room, Ricardo appeared. Deputy manager, 36 years old, navy blue suit, gelled hair slicked back. He heard everything, and instead of intervening, he crossed his arms and smiled. Camilla is right. His voice had institutional authority. We have to maintain the establishment standard. Our customers deserve comfort. The sentence seemed reasonable, almost professional, as if exclusion were a quality policy, as if dignity had a dress code. The couple at table 4 nodded in agreement. Finally, someone with the courage to speak the truth. The man murmured. The woman laughed softly, satisfied. At table 7, one of the executives raised his wine glass in a gesture of silent support. Camilla felt validated, powerful, protected by collective complicity. But then a small voice cut through the silence. "Mommy, why is that lady wet?" A 6-year-old girl, with blonde hair and braids and a pink dress, was pointing at Donna Clarice. The mother pulled her daughter's hand hard. "Don't look, Sophia, it's none of our business." "But is she crying? I told you not to look." The child insisted, eyes wide, confused, but the girl threw water on her. "That's ugly, isn't it?" The mother turned red, embarrassed. He lowered his voice, almost whispering, "Sometimes people deserve it, daughter. Now eat." And there, at that moment, cruelty gained a new layer. Because it wasn't just Camilla humiliating Donna Clarice. It was a whole structure teaching a child that certain people deserve to be treated as less. That exclusion is natural. That silence in the face of injustice is politeness. Did Mrs. Clarice hear everything? No, but he felt it. In the weight of the looks, in the collective laughter that echoed like breaking glass, in the fact that no one, absolutely no one, stood up. Lucas saw everything from where he was, and his anger wasn't just for his mother anymore. It was for that child learning hate, for that woman at table 9 crying silently because she knew she could be next, for all the black waiters who had already been humiliated there and were unable to react. Camilla took another step towards Donna Clarice. He leaned in, his voice low but venomous. "If I were you, I would leave now, before the situation gets worse." It was a threat disguised as advice. Violence wrapped in education. Donna Clarice did not move. He just looked at Camilla with that devastating calm of someone who has survived worse things. And Camilla, for the first time, felt that something was wrong, because that woman should be crying, begging, leaving. But she was there, firm, as if the floor were hers. And perhaps the scariest thing was realizing that it really was. The noise came out of nowhere. A silver fork fell to the floor. The metal hit the marble with a dull crash. Then, absolute silence. As if the whole world had paused to breathe, Lucas took the first step, then the second, then the third. His leather shoes echoed in the hall. Every step was measured, deliberate, no rush, no explosive rage, just presence. He calmly adjusted his charcoal gray jacket. He pulled the cuffs of his white shirt out of the sleeves. Slow movements, like someone who has all the time in the world, because those who have power don't need to run. His eyes swept the room, table by table, customer by customer. The couple who laughed, the executives who toasted, the woman who taught her daughter not to look. Ricardo, the replacement manager, who validated the cruelty with institutional authority, and Camilla, who was now holding the tray with both hands, trying to look confident, but his right hand was shaking. Unnoticeable to others, but Lucas saw. He always saw. Ricardo took a step forward, trying to block the way. "Sir, please, let's resolve this civilly." Lucas stopped 2 meters away from him. He didn't answer, just looked. He looked with that disarming intensity. Ricardo blinked first. He swallowed hard. He took a step back without realizing it. In the corner of the room, near the kitchen door, 2 security guards exchanged glances. One of them, Andre, 42 years old, ex-military, black, recognized Lucas immediately. He touched his colleague's shoulder and whispered something. The 2 walked away. They weren't going to intervene, because they knew who he was. Camilla noticed the security guards moving. He frowned. Why did they retreat? Why weren't they on her side? Something was wrong. Very wrong. Lucas continued walking. He stopped in the center of the room, exactly under the crystal chandelier. The golden light reflected on his face. He didn't need to shout. There was no need to bang on the table. His presence was enough. Shoulders straight, chin up. A look that crossed. Ricardo tried again. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but do you understand?" Lucas's voice was low, but sharp. "Do you understand what it's like to see your mother publicly humiliated?" Ricardo opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Camilla took a step back, instinctively, like an animal that senses a predator nearby. She didn't know who Lucas was yet, but her body already knew it had crossed an irreversible line. At table 9, the black woman in the red dress raised her head. For the first time, he stopped crying. She saw Lucas, saw his posture, the devastating calm, and he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Lucas turned to Dona Clarice. Their eyes met. She nodded slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture, but that said it all. "Go ahead, son. I can handle it." He smirked, because I knew she could handle it. Always held up, but today she wouldn't need it. Lucas turned his gaze to Camilla, and finally he spoke the words that would turn everything around. Because sometimes power is just waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. "Camilla." Lucas's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. She turned away, trying to maintain a professional smile. "Can I help you with anything, sir?" Lucas took 3 more steps. He stopped 2 meters away from her, close enough that she could feel the weight of his presence, far enough away that it didn't feel like a physical threat. "Just morals. Do you know who this woman is that you just humiliated?" Camilla blinked, confused, irritated by the question. "I don't know. I don't even care." She crossed her arms defensively. "All I know is that she shouldn't be here. She doesn't have the profile for this establishment." The sentence came out so naturally that it was frightening, as if exclusion were a technical criterion, as if dignity had a dress code. Ricardo tried to intervene in a conciliatory voice. "Sir, let's settle this calmly. We can talk in the office." Lucas raised his hand. Simple gesture, but that silenced Ricardo instantly. "Do you want to talk too?" It wasn't a question. It was a warning. Ricardo took 2 steps back, pale. Lucas turned his gaze to Camilla. He took a deep breath, and then he said, slowly, each word weighing tons, "She's my mother." The hall froze, literally. Forks stopped in midair. Glasses hung halfway to their lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. Camilla laughed, nervosa, unbelieving. "Your mother?" She looked at Dona Clarice, then at Lucas. "That doesn't make sense." "She doesn't look, I mean..." The sentence died because she realized that any ending would be condemnation. Lucas continued, his voice firm. "Without her, none of this would exist." He pointed around. Every table, every chandelier, every dish served here. Devastating pause. "She scrubbed the floor of this restaurant for 20 years, on her knees, while people like you walked all over it without even looking." The silence now had texture, thick, suffocating. At table 4, the woman in the beige blazer looked down, embarrassed. At table 7, one of the executives quickly put away his cell phone. The girl in the pink dress asked again. "Mommy," he said, "it's his mom." Why was the girl mean to his mom? The mother did not answer. She simply pulled her daughter closer, as if proximity could erase the lesson of cruelty the child had witnessed. Camilla tried to recover. "I didn't know that. I did not know." Lucas tilted his head slightly. "Do you need to know who someone is to treat them with respect?" The question echoed through the hall like a universal accusation, because it wasn't just for Camilla. It was for every person there who measured human worth by appearance, for clothes, by skin color. Ricardo tried again, desperate. "Mr. Mendez, I can explain." "Mr. Mendez?" The voice came from table 2. The elderly man who had lowered his head earlier now looked at Lucas with sudden recognition. "Are you the owner?" Lucas didn't answer. There was no need. Silence was already an answer. And in that moment, every recorded laugh, every photo taken, Every nasty comment made in that room took on a different weight, because it wasn't just cruelty anymore. It was insubordination against those who paid their salaries. It was institutional disrespect. It was documented evidence of discrimination in the establishment itself. Camilla dropped the tray. The porcelain shattered on the floor. Because sometimes the truth doesn't need to scream to destroy. If it were you in this moment, how would you react? Would you have the courage to stand up, or would you remain silent? Leave your answer in the comments. Lucas put his hand in his inside jacket pocket. Slow motion. Calculated. All eyes in the room followed. He took out a golden key, small but heavy. On the engraved metal plate, letters in relief, Lucas Mendez, Bellagio owner. He raised the key above his head, slowly, so that every person there could see, to read, process, because I own this restaurant. The sentence fell like a judge's gavel. Final, irrevocable. The hall exploded in simultaneous reactions. The couple at table 4 lowered their heads, faces red with embarrassment. The man quickly put his cell phone away, as if deleting the recording could erase the complicity. At table 7, the executives exchanged terrified glances. One of them had just posted on his stories with the caption, "When the rabble invades places of good people." He deleted it right away. But everyone knows that the internet doesn't forget. Ricardo turned white, completely white, as if all the blood had drained from his body at once. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Tried again. "Mr. Mendez, I didn't know you were..." "What was it?" Lucas turned to him. "Was it my mother? Or was it a human being?" Ricardo swallowed hard. I had no answer for that, because any answer would be a confession. Camilla was paralyzed, broken tray at the feet, eyes wide, hands shaking uncontrollably now. She had publicly humiliated her own boss's mother, in front of dozens of witnesses, with recordings. His career wasn't just compromised, it was destroyed. And she knew. But then came the sound. One palm, unique, firm. Coming from table 9. The black woman in the red dress had stood up, and he applauded. Tears streamed down her face. But she smiled. For the first time that night, I smiled. Another clap joined in. The elderly gentleman at table 2, then another. The black waiter who had seen everything from the kitchen came out and applauded too. The applause grew louder, shy at first, then stronger. More people stood up. Not all. The couple at table 4 remained seated, heads bowed. The executives at table 7 remained in guilty silence, but there was enough applause to echo off the marble walls. Lucas walked up to Donna Clarice. He took a clean white cloth napkin from another table. He knelt down beside her, and with care, infinite kindness, he began to dry his mother's face. She touched his hand. He spoke slowly in sign language. "You didn't have to," he answered loudly, so that everyone could hear. "I always needed it. You're the reason all of this exists." Lucas stood up and turned to the hall. Firm, clear voice, each word a sentence. "The respect you denied my mother is what sustains every table here. Every plate, every light on, every salary paid." Devastating pause. "She built this, with her hands, with her sweat, with the dignity you tried to steal today." The silence was now one of shock, of collective embarrassment, of justice being served raw. Lucas looked directly at Camilla. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave." Then to Ricardo. "You too." Ricardo tried to argue. "Mr. Mendez, please, I have family. And my mother doesn't have one." End of conversation. Because respect is not negotiable, it is imposed. Share this story so more people gain the courage to stand up against injustice. Representation saves lives. Donna Clarice stood up slowly, not in a hurry, not angry, with the dignity of someone who never needed to prove that they deserved to be anywhere. The navy blue dress was still stained with water, but she didn't care anymore, because dirty laundry gets washed. Wounded dignity, when it survives, becomes armor. Lucas held out his hand to her. She took it, fingers intertwined. Mother and son. 2 generations of resistance in a simple gesture. Donna Clarice looked at him and said slowly in sign language, "Pride." 1 word. But that carried decades of scrubbed floor, of swallowed insults, with doors closed in your face, from, "You can't come in here," from a "We don't have any openings for your type," from "Sorry, but customers will find it strange." All of this was in that word, and also victory. Lucas raised his hand, intertwined with hers, above their heads, as a boxer who won the hardest fight of his life. The whole room saw it. Some applauded louder. Others lowered their eyes in shame. The black woman at table 9 crossed the room. He stopped in front of Donna Clarice and hugged, strong, without asking permission, because some pains can only be healed with mutual recognition. "Thank you," she whispered in Clarice's ear, "for not leaving, for not lowering your head." Donna Clarice didn't hear the words, but he felt the hug, and he understood everything. At the kitchen door, a 6-year-old black girl watched everything. Daughter of one of the cooks, eyes wide, mouth half open. She had seen the water being thrown. I had seen the laughter. I had seen the isolation. But he had also seen the resistance, the victory, justice. And in that moment, something changed inside her. Because she learned that black women don't have to shrink. That existing in elite spaces is not an invasion. It's right. Lucas saw the girl. He motioned for her to come closer. She hesitated. The mother, in a white apron, waved that she could go. The little girl walked slowly towards Donna Clarice. She looked up shyly. Donna Clarice smiled. That tired smile of someone who carried the world on their shoulders but never let go. She bent down, getting to the girl's height, and he spoke in sign language, slowly, knowing that the child wouldn't understand, but doing it anyway. Because gestures of dignity don't need translation. Lucas translated aloud. "You never have to apologize for existing." The girl nodded. "I didn't fully understand it yet, but one day I would understand." One day, when someone tried to make her feel small, she would remember that night, of that soaked woman who didn't come out, from that man who turned humiliation into justice. And I would know that resistance is a legacy. Lucas looked around the room one last time, for each table, for every face. This restaurant was built with the sweat of people like my mother, and it will continue to be a place where everyone is welcome. Always. He paused. But respect is not optional here, it's mandatory. The hall wasn't just applauding a restaurant owner. He applauded the victory of generations who refused to disappear. Because when a black mother stands up, the whole world needs to bow down to her dignity. If this story touched you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share it so more people can reflect and become stronger. Our struggle deserves to be remembered forever.